Welcome to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.
Who was Stella Lansing? Who were the earliest advocates of the multiverse theory? Will the world end in 2020?
Welcome to the 824th edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno, and our last live show of 2019. I'm not Ben, but I'm subbing in for Ben. And those diverse questions came from my co-host, partner in the paranormal adventure, and Ben's dad, Paul. Today we offer an unexpected open line show with our favorite guest co-host. And we welcome your calls today at 401-766-1240 from anywhere, 401-766-1240. Or you can email Paul at behindtheparanormal.com or contact us by Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.
Okay, well, let's explain what's going on here. Ben has been on the weather today, so our distinguished station manager, Dave Richards, is honoring us by sitting in the Ben chair. And we have our favorite guest co-host with us today also for Open Lines, Shane Sirois.
Hey, everybody. And before I forget, I heard from a faithful listener who wants to say hello to everybody, Robin Beltrami. And yeah, she'll be listening. She just wanted us to know.
Robin is from Utah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think she's called in once. That's great. Okay, so let us begin. We have a lot to get through here. Let's begin with a couple that came in through Facebook just within the past week, before we get to the ones from 2012 and that sort of thing. We haven't caught up with yet. And this is Patty from Pennsylvania. You want to take that one, Shane?
Sure.
Okay.
I treated myself for Christmas with Dancing Past the Graveyard and Behind the Paranormal. Everything you know is wrong. I only read it in batches because there's so much to think about on every page. I do have a question. You mentioned Jacques Vallée early in the book, and I wonder what you think about John Keel's work. It seems he was hinting at a similar theory. He would bring up a point in his books, tell the reader to think about what that point says to you, but never comes out and explains himself. However, it was obvious that he believed that the entire UFO, alien, Bigfoot scenario was not what it seemed and that it was all related. I don't think he ever mentioned physical versus non-physical, not solid, and I thought Vallée leaned toward the non-physical. I could be wrong. I have read most of his books, so I read early on about your dimensional parallel world theories. I'm so happy to see that your experiences haven't dissuaded you from that theory and that you have only reinforced and confirmed it.
All right, well, I guess I'll take that one to start. Patty, thank you for your kind words. It was those experiences in the latest book that helped form that theory. And as Ben and I always say, we could be wrong. And I guess we're coming in a little late on the recording here for anybody who's listening in the distant future. But it's Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno on WOON 1240 with our station manager sitting in for Ben today, Dave Richards, and our co-host Shane Sirois. So anyway, we're answering a question from Patty in Pennsylvania. Was wondering about the work of Jacques Vallée and also the work of John Keel. Now, Jacques Vallée was, a French scientist who ended up living in California and is still there. I am distressed to say we do not know him. I think that's going to have to be remedied. Jacques was one of the first ones to come up with what we today call the multiverse theory. In other words, he began to see patterns and all sorts of various relationships within paranormal events, UFOs, etc., and he began to draw these parallels and sort of fill in, connect the dots, as they say. John Keel. And this is starting in the 1950s. Jacques Vallée has sort of been at this certainly longer than I have, to say the least. And John Keel was a New York journalist, background rather similar to my own, and he came to prominence in the Mothman cases of the the mid to late 1960s in the Ohio Valley, and the Mothman being the name that the press gave to this entity that was seen around. And as I've explained several times on the air, they were going to call him Batman. But the TV series with Adam West was about to begin, and they were afraid of a giant lawsuit, so they called him Mothman instead. So in any case, all sorts of, we've spoken to witnesses to that, Ben and I, when we were down there in 2003. And John Keel had a theory he called window areas, which really sort of is equivalent to our idea of multiversal intersect points and overwashes, and we actually had to invent a vocabulary just to talk about this stuff. So Jacques Vallée and John Keel were sort of early advocates of that theory. So it's not our theory, it's our experience. Mine starting in 1970 and then Ben starting in 2005. And we tend to think it's correct. Again, we could be wrong, but we don't think so. So Shane, what are your comments on these giants of paranormal pioneering here?
Well, both of them. I mean, mildly familiar with both their work, but doing my work, I've come to certain conclusions and stuff, and then I was introduced to these guys, and I, listened to some of this stuff. Yeah,
that's what happened to me. I came up with the ideas first, and then I heard about these guys. Yeah,
and I agree with a lot of what they have to say, both of them. I mean, even John Keel talked about, the smells during alien abduction or with Bigfoot, the smell or poltergeist activity, that there's that smell, and maybe the smell is a product of the process of what's allowing these things to interact.
Yeah, I've smelled ozone.
Yeah.
During that, particularly in the Bridgeport case in 1974.
Yep. So
in the thick of it. Yeah.
I definitely agree with a lot of their theories on things, and absolutely.
Yeah. Well, ozone comes from the splitting of the oxygen molecule during electrical events. So, that's one indication and we're always saying there are electromagnetic fields involved in this sort of thing and all that. So, the thing, there has been, Vallée has always been very well respected. There was some speculation that John Keel exaggerated at times, but I've never heard that he was ever accused of out-and-out dishonesty. So,
right, yeah.
But regardless of the thing, I mean, the experiences they had and experiences we've had lead to the same conclusion. And Shane and I both came to the conclusions before we knew about the work of these fine researchers. So,
that's right. Yep.
Yeah. So, but again, the approach does not necessarily have to be the same. There were a lot of non-material speculations by Vallée. And John Keel didn't really, he was kind of more or less toward our point of view, because he said, well, this is what I see. I can't necessarily explain it, but there seem to be window areas and things of this kind where you have multiple sorts of events going on from paranormal perspective that aren't traditionally related to one another. So, because perhaps the processes behind it all. So that's pretty much that. Okay, well, Patty, I hope that answers your question. And thank you again for your kind words. And we have a very brief one from Matthew in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada.
I read in your book, Beyond the Paranormal, that you think the world is going to end in 2020. When and why?
Okay. All right. Well, I don't know quite how you interpreted that, Matthew, but we don't make predictions. We will express opinions and maybe hunches and say, this and that. But, predictions are foolhardy, I think. That's been in the year 999 AD. About this time of the year, thousands of people in Europe headed for the hilltops because they figure, the year 1000 is going to start, so the world's going to end. I mean, and how'd that work out? So, I don't know where you would have read that. I think I suspect you may have picked that up from the epilogue of the book. And Ben and I are co-authors of that book, but I wrote the epilogue. And we stuck our necks out with this good world theory on Coast to Coast AM one year, and we were expecting the whole country to be laughing at us, but actually we got thousands of emails, people having the same experiences and things we didn't even say. So that was kind of impressive. Two people disagreed with us, and one later apologized. And there were rather profuse abuse, but anyway. So most people who heard it seemed to resonate. We did make reference many years ago to the 2012 to 2016 to 2020 period as one of what we suspected upheaval, but that was just you look at the news, you could have seen that coming. So no predictions there, just advocating sort of quiet contemplation and doing what you're supposed to do, fulfilling your responsibilities. Because whatever happens, Ben and I have the theory, we want to be found, even in the worst case scenario, doing what we're supposed to be doing, loving our families, fulfilling our responsibilities, doing our work. and that sort of thing. So I do not necessarily believe anything's going to happen to end the world in 2020, but it does bring up the question, what does it mean, end of the world? The whole planet goes poof, everybody disappears, last man on earth kind of thing. Shane, what say you about all this?
I don't know. Well, it was more directed towards you with the book, right? So
that's true. So nobody can blame you.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I don't feel that happening.
No, I mean, hope not. I got things I want to do. Dave, you are sitting in for Ben today. If you have any comments, you always have very articulate and interesting things to say. So,
except when I'm in the presence of such thinkers as you and Shane.
Oh, good grief! I guess he didn't read the book. Oh.
I don't pretend to know anything about this stuff, but I'm pretty happy with my own opinions. And
okay.
And in this particular case, it generally is in line with what you are. I don't care when the world's going to end, but when it does, I want to be found doing something useful, serving humanity, and doing something that my grandmother would be proud of.
I think that's a very good way to put it. Absolutely. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Patty and Matthew, for those. And we have some.
Because remember, I'm going to live to 94.
Oh, okay. So you're making a prediction. All right.
Well, no, but it's something I decided a long time ago. I told you about this. My great grandfather lived to 94.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
He buried 4 wives.
Mm-hmm.
Survived cancer. Big operations, the whole business, lived till 2 months before he died on the 3rd floor of a walk-up tenement building he bought when he lost his arm in the 1940s. And this is a hard man.
Yes.
He kept the things up, and he died at 94, so I said, I can do no less than that.
Good genes.
I got a nice, cushy life here.
Mm-hmm.
So I lived to 94, and you stop and consider, what is the thing that so many people fear? Death. Because it's the great unknown, and there's no turning back. If you don't like it, you can't come back. You can't turn it in at Walmart customer service.
Yeah.
So I figured, if I just figure that I'm going to convince myself I'm going to die at age 94, I'm not 94. So I got nothing to worry about. And then
I'll have to chew on that for a bit. Yeah.
And then, now here's the kicker: if I turn out somewhere along the line to be wrong, I got no worries anyway.
Yeah. Well, our theories are rather odd and out there about death. I don't think there is any such thing. If this multiverse thing is true, you can't. How can you die if you have so many versions of yourself out there, even physically? So this sort of casts a whole new light on something. But unless somebody has a question today, there are other shows we can refer you to on that subject. Okay, here is one. This, I'm afraid, goes back a long way. August 2018. We never got to it. This is a letter from Simon in the UK. So we have, I think we have a caller. So maybe we'll hold off on that. Okay. So, but anyway, this is a question that we'll put a. We'll wait in just a minute for that. And we do have a caller, and we'll wait for our distinguished gentleman here to get it into the system. And welcome to WOON. You're on. I'm sorry?
Phil from Orange.
Oh, Phil from Orange. Phil from Orange, Massachusetts. Phil, welcome to the show.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon. You have a question or comment for our merry band?
I do indeed. And this is sort of out of left field, but I've been wondering about this question, and I thought the gentleman could help out. And so here we go. Given that the entities performing surgical animal mutilations probably have the ability to fly somewhere remote to drop off the carcasses where they won't be seen, thereby preventing intense speculation about how an animal was mutilated half an hour after it was seen walking around, or otherwise bankrupting ranchers over time and horrifying people who see the animals. I wonder if the hosts have given any thought to why the entities have never tried to conceal these weird killings when they're known to be surreptitious in their other activities.
Interesting question. Shane, you want
to
lasso that one?
I think.
Hi, Shane.
Hey, Phil. So I think these things Here's my opinion. Same thing with the missing 411, where these people are being taken. Same thing with these mutilations, and same thing with a lot of the other things that we deal with, like these parasitic entities, these hauntings, if you will. I think what's happening here with all those scenarios is that whatever is doing these things they're feeding off of fear. They're feeding off, they're tormenting these things. They get something out of that fear, that emotional energy and frequency, or emotional energy. And I think it's the same thing with what's going on with the missing 411, where these people just poof, they're gone, and then they find their body 4 months later with no reason for them to be dead, but they're dead. And same thing with the mutilations. And I think the reason why they're not trying to conceal it, and whatever's doing this is to help that fear process, because now everyone's afraid something's going on, and you have to have your attention drawn on these things, and that's one thing that they want. And so if you're always thinking about them and you're fearing them because you know something's going on, something's killing these things in a brutal way, then that fear is always in you, and that's what they thrive off of. So that's my personal opinion, and that's what I've seen over all the years I've been doing this. I think it's totally is whatever's doing all these things. They're getting something from that fear, that emotional energy.
But there is an obvious purpose to taking specific tissue. So, I mean, there's also that layer of mystery.
Absolutely, yeah. There's something to that, too. I mean, of course, we don't know what that is, but there definitely is where they take certain organs, and sometimes the organs are missing and there's no incision at all.
God, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, so...
We shouldn't count on any empathy among this group.
Right, right. So It's very horrible, whatever it is.
Well, I've heard every theory in the book. Shane has two. One theory I've heard that seems to be rather down to earth, if you will forgive that, is that many of these incisions and cattle mutilations are taking place in the Southwest, not far from areas where the nuclear tests, open-air nuclear explosions of the 1950s and 40s occurred. And there is one theory that this is a clandestine government operation to monitor the contamination of the meat supply. All right. Now that may or may not have any validity. It seems like there might be simpler and cheaper ways to do that. I mean, the government has some of even of its own cattle on land that it owns, and because here in the East we're not too familiar with the Bureau of Land Management, but it's a big entity in the West, and people have a love-hate relationship with it, especially ranchers. So there could be some connection with government activity. On the other hand, people, if you can believe the reports, have occasionally seen the perpetrators of this. They seem almost like Men in Black, at least some of the descriptions I've heard. There have been reports of UFOs, the classic UFO, the disc or the ball of light emitting the sound of a helicopter. There have been reports of helicopters making no sound at all, yet flying. I mean, you name it, it's been connected with this phenomenon. And we've done very few shows on this. I think we did one. Good grief, I'd have to look it up, but it was way back, had to be 5-6 years ago now, and perhaps we ought to pay more attention to it. But the question might arise too, Phil, that how would you be clandestine about this in the sense of covering up the evidence? I mean, people are going to see.
Just drop the animal off in the ocean.
Well, if you have that kind of technology, you can travel that quickly. You could drop it off in the ocean. Yeah.
This is strange too. Make
any attempt.
Yeah.
In comparison, something to consider too is some of those cattle or whatever, farmers have seen them rising up out of the prairie into the sky.
There have been reports of that, yeah.
And then they find them later on where they're dropped and they're just crushed inside internally from the fall. With these missing 411 things too, I don't want you to keep using that term, but with all those strange disappearances, a lot of times they find these bodies and the cause of death is a fall from a very high distance, but there's no cliff near them. There's no, there was nothing for them to have fallen off of. Mm-hmm. But it was like they definitely died on impact, but the other body is on, kind of like the same thing that was going on with the cattle mutilation or the cattle.
Well, it's not just
whether or not there's intentional malice to generate fear. It may be that if there is a nutritional aspect to harvesting those organs, it may be that entities which do feed on negative energy might show up later when the rancher and his family is horrified to see the animals. I mean, who knows?
That's another, one of many possibilities. Also, we should point out that it's not just cattle where these things have occurred. Certain wild animals have been reported mutilated in the same way with very sophisticated instruments, apparently that probably laser-based, that cauterize the wounds as they work. And this sort of thing. Linda Moulton Howe was even on the show one time and reporting fish mutilations. Fish. That's what I said. Fish. And I mean, how do you tell whether fish have been? But when you have thousands of them sort of lying there and nobody's eaten them, and there have been certain organs removed, things of this kind. This was reported in I believe it was Washington State. Some years ago, but Linda Moulton Howe being a tremendous, being a journalist, science journalist who collects stories like this, we've always trusted her. So who knows?
They just found
All right, gentlemen. Well, I'll just wish you a happy New Year and thank you for all the great shows.
Well, thank you very much, Phil. We'll talk to you soon, I hope. Happy New Year.
Bye-bye. They just I just saw it. I didn't read it nothing, but it looked like a legit thing where it was a coyote or a fox that was impaled like 12 or 15 feet up in a tree onto a branch. The branch was shoved right through its skull, and it was just hanging there. It was like, what could have done that,
Yeah. Why would anybody? That's bizarre. We don't know. Okay, well, let's I guess Simon here has been waiting. Simon in the UK, and it says, I've read The Haunted House Diaries by William J. Hall, and he mentions that you have video and photos of an alleged paranormal serpent-like object and descending from a tree. Can these be found online? So it was a very practical question from Simon. Yes, Simon, if you go to the Facebook page of this show, Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno, the first video that you will find is this tadpole-like object moving down this tree. And the background of that was in 2010, Ben and I were in Torrington, Connecticut, at the house where this Litchfield Triangle, as we call it, first began, for us anyway. And we were working with a team from a producer and camera crew from New York to do a possible show on this, which never went anywhere, but it was very, very cold, and the little 4-year-old boy in the house said that his invisible friend Ashwar was in the tree outside the house. So Ben and I went out, and I pointed the infrared camera up into the tree, and sure enough, I got this thing coming down out of the tree. You can see it about 6 seconds in, and it is really quite striking. And again, if you go to the Facebook page, you can see that. It has, I think, Coast to Coast AM has it as well in their collection, and it's around. So, but you can find it most easily on the Facebook page. Now, the interesting sequel to that was at one point, not too many years later, Shane was on the trail, Sherlock Holmes of the paranormal as he is. And tell us what you found, Shane, about the name Ashwar.
Yeah, so we were spelling it Ashwar.
Yeah.
And so I was doing searches on that because I'm like, that's such a strange name, and this young boy came up with it.
Yeah, 4-year-old kid.
There has to be something to it. So I came up with a tribe from, I think it was Central America or something.
Central and South America.
Yeah, and it was spelled Achuar, pronounced Ashwar, and that means that name means in their language people of the trees, and that's where Paul filmed this thing coming out of the tree.
And the boy said Ashwar's people live in trees.
Mm-hmm. That's not a coincidence.
How's this 4-year-old kid from Connecticut going to know this about this obscure tribe, which is almost extinct, as I understand it? Just really, really amazing. Okay, why don't we take our break, I guess? We'll take our break here. You're listening to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno, and today with Dave Richards and Shane Sirois on WOON 1240 AM and 99.5 FM in New England's beautiful Blackstone River Valley. Local and live on 99.5. I love that. And we'll be right back. Stick with us.
It's the latest thing. It's offline shopping. You don't need a special app. You don't need a credit card. You don't even need someone to watch your porch for delivery. In fact, when you do offline shopping, delivery is always free because you take what you bought home with you. Because offline shopping is local shopping in stores with real shopping carts where you can touch and feel and see exactly what you're buying before you pay for it. Join the latest craze and help your neighbors and your community in the bargain. Try offline shopping today. This message sponsored by the Blackstone Valley Independent Business Alliance, the Buy Local Group.
Shop local first, all across the area. Shop here first.
Back to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno on WOON 1240 AM and 99.5 FM. And this is Paul speaking, and we have sitting in for Ben today our distinguished station manager, Dave Richards, and our special guest co-host, Shane Sirois, who's with us for almost all our open line shows. So let's continue with the open line, so to speak. And we're going to go back to the past here to a show from last year, questions we never got to. And this is Linda from Ocala, Florida. Could two very weird phenomena, strange sky sounds and human disappearances, be connected? I have heard that they are, and could either one of them be connected to parasites as far as taking people? That sounds like it's right up your street, Shane.
Yeah. So, one thing I do know is where these people disappear under strange circumstances that can't be explained or whatever, and there's often weird sounds or humming noises or sounds heard prior to them disappearing. I mean, it's not every time, but it's reported quite a bit. So, I mean, do we know for sure? No. I mean, but I know the sounds she's talking about, there seem to be happening more and more frequently, and even way out in the middle of the woods where there's just miles and miles and miles of wilderness, and then you got sometimes this gear grinding metal sound, like twisted metal, trumpet sound sometimes, and you can't tell where it's coming from. Also, they were hearing that too outside of North Carolina, but when they hear those sounds, they also see these UFOs off in the horizon over the ocean, often orange when they're hearing these sounds. But in the United States, it goes back. Reports go back as far as the Lake Seneca, the Seneca guns or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Where they were hearing what they thought were like cannon sounds, but but it was coming.
Or the Moodus noises in Connecticut. I grew up near there.
Yeah,
which turned out to be seismic. So they said. Well, there are non-paranormal explanations for some of these things anyway.
Sure, yeah.
Seismic being one. The people who research earthquakes and tectonic movements will sometimes point to this and say, aha, this is what this is. On the other hand, there have been some other unexpected explanations. We were on the air in Detroit with there's a CBS station there for 4.5 years, and we developed a listenership, and people would write in about the weird sounds taking place that they'd hear in Windsor, Ontario, particularly, which is right across from the river from Detroit, the lake. And they would say there would be a hum. Sometimes they would even feel it, kind of a vibration in themselves or even in the material objects in their house. And we did a lot of research, and we talked to some people, and we think that at least partial explanation was that there was an unused power plant on an island between, I think it was American island, but it was between the U.S. and Canada there in that area. And some of the turbines the wind would sometimes turn them and would create what we call infrasound. Mm-hmm. And we've traced a lot of phenomena to infrasound and standing waves that are Ben is a sound expert. You could talk very eloquently about this, but that can make the eyeballs literally vibrate in your head at a certain frequency. Maybe David knows about this too. And this can cause you to see and hear things. And this might not be the whole explanation, but I mean, this apparently was partially the answer to the issue in Windsor, Ontario, and Detroit, Michigan. So that was one of those things. But it's very difficult to explain things like you and I were witness with 3 other people to what we call the tone. Mm-hmm. We played it on this show in a 2-hour special we did on May 26th, and people can go back in the archives and look at that and hear it. And it was, it moved. It was, we don't know. It didn't seem to have a source. Ben wasn't with us, but he was here hosting the show when we did it. And there were a number of characteristics that he pointed out. But we heard that ourselves, and it went off into the sky because it led us outside, and we've talked about that. And you and I were both witness to that. So things of that kind. But I can't see how that would be seismic. It could be, as our friend Mark Antonio says, undiscovered science. But until it's discovered, it's still rather a mystery and rather something. But I think perhaps attention needs to be paid to any disappearances, per Linda's question, that might occur in areas where this takes place. On the other hand, in these flap areas that we research, all kinds of things are taking place that are related perhaps by the processes that allow them to occur, but aren't necessarily. I don't know. We don't know.
Well, the areas where these people are going missing, there's clusters that they happen in. It's just not all over the place. I mean, there's quite a few of them in the United States and Canada and elsewhere, but there's clusters that are formulated and where they're happening, and in those areas, they have the same environmental qualities as do our flap areas. They're all surrounded by rivers and streams, and some of them are, like, there is a cluster in our Pennsylvania flap area. So I mean, it's not a coincidence. And in these areas, these flap areas, and also in some of the homes that we investigate, some of the Bigfoot areas, if you will, or which are usually always a flap area and then some of the UFO research that I've done prior to something happening. So many times I can sometimes hear a humming, but almost always before something happens, like you were saying, it's like a really fast vibration, and my body is buzzing. This is like, it just feels like it's like so fast. And then things start happening. So that's definitely being caused by whatever process this is and allowing these things to come through. And I think they're all coming through the same way, utilizing the same things, because, I know a lot of people believe Bigfoot is just flesh and blood and he's just something that is good at hide and go seek and all this other stuff. But let me tell you something. I've come up on Bigfoot prints or huge footprints that started from nowhere. Yeah. And they ended in the middle of nowhere. Yep. Where did they go? I mean, I'm talking not just in mud where the ground could have got harder or whatever. I'm talking in the snow, fresh snow. They just appear and then they trail off for 100 yards and then they just stop. So, I mean, there's a process that happens and like I get that buzzy feeling or humming sound sometimes, and then some weird things will take place. We get it in homes. But, in where these people are going missing, it's all, like I said, they got the same qualities as our flap areas where everything weird is happening. So whatever's taking these people, I think, are coming through from somewhere else.
There have been, on a case we're just starting to get into, the Kentucky Panther Rock Triangle area, there have been human disappearances reported, but not recently that I'm aware of, that we're in Pennsylvania, in that flap, or in Connecticut, in the Torrington, Goshen, Litchfield area, that we're aware of that would have any connection. That in others that hasn't been explained as a kidnapping or something, So, but in the past, and we've talked a bit about the history of the Pennsylvania Triangle on the show before, and there are some awfully strange things that happen to people in that area. For example, in about 1500, apparently a large number of Native Americans were killed in that, because that's not a disappearance, but in that area by a meteor strike or something rather formidable of that kind. And that's been vetted by University of Pennsylvania archaeologists, things of that kind, right up in that field where, not far from where you had your Bigfoot kind and right where I had mine. So again, it's a mystery as far as relationships. There were always relationships.
Well, the Pennsylvania area, there has been quite a few disappearances real close to where we're at. We're investigating,
Yeah, see, that's your domain more than mine.
Yeah, and I'm talking, they don't have as many as Yosemite or some of these other places, but the ones about Pennsylvania, the missing people in Pennsylvania are just really bizarre. Like the stories that happen there with these missing cases are just insanely bizarre. And so we know Pennsylvania is very strange. And
yes, well, people are great, but
yes, people are great.
A lot of strange paranormal stuff goes on there. Yeah, it's renowned for that. Well, the question arises too: if this multiverse thing is correct and our consciousness kind of follows us, how do you know that you didn't disappear during that Bigfoot experience you had in 2016, May of 2016.
Right.
But your consciousness just and you don't know. So, or me, in some of the weird things that have happened to me there. And I mean, who knows? I mean, and we don't know the difference ourselves. But in various versions of the world, if the multiverse theory is true, maybe they're still looking for us.
Well, here's a strange one. One of the strangest missing persons cases, the gentleman went missing for 15 months. And he woke up in the field, and he was wearing clothes that weren't his. He had a duffel bag or whatever with maps and stuff inside that he didn't remember having. But he had no memory of where he was, what he did. But he woke up in this field 15 months after he went missing, and showed up at his father's door. But it's just very bizarre. So, what kept him alive? Did he enter through some portal, or did he cross over into a different, parallel or whatever? And then
this is the thing. That's why you have just as many strange appearances almost as disappearances, even of animals. In Behind the Paranormal, Everything You Know Is Wrong, the 2016 book Ben and I wrote. We cited the 1960s mysterious kangaroo outbreak in the Midwestern United States. And right within the borders of Chicago, the city of Chicago, people were seeing them and they're going through their garbage cans in their backyard.
Really?
And the police actually tried to cuff one, and it just leaped over the fence and ran away. But how do you cuff? Luckily, the kangaroo didn't slug the cop, but because they do that. And then 50 miles away, like in the same afternoon, another one was saying, so it can't have been the same animal. Those were more than one. No escapes from circuses. It's, of course, a big port on the Great Lakes, but we're not aware of any ships that were carrying kangaroos at that point. So these things are out-of-place animals, out-of-place people. The weirdest one I think I ever encountered, I guess I didn't have any, it happened before I really got into this, but I was a kid. At the airport in Tokyo, a guy showed up with a passport from a country that didn't exist, clothes that were made in a very odd way. They couldn't, and he had memories of a world that did, and he ended up taking his own life because he couldn't deal with it. Nobody knew what to do with him. And I've checked, and there are people I know who have talked to witnesses who saw this guy, like people in the Japanese Customs Service, things of this kind. So I mean, appearances and disappearances. Whether any sounds were associated, I don't know. But
the guy that went missing for 15 months, they found he was at a Michigan beach or something like that, and they found his tracks. Dogs scent and all that sort of stuff. The tracks just stopped, and he just boom, gone. Like he was plucked from the ground. I mean, and then he showed up. I think it was like 400 miles far away from where he went missing. 15 months later, just really weird.
Well, I actually know people, and I talked to them when I was in England. They were jogging with a guy. It was late 1970s, 1978, and along a road. He was in front of them. He tripped, fell, and disappeared. Never seen or heard from again.
Huh.
Traumatized everybody, to say the least. But I mean, what is that?
What is them finding feet, shoes with feet in them over there too?
Yeah, lately, yeah,
and they're washing up. I mean, weird.
Well, not to belabor this because we got more questions, but when I was in the Southwest, I saw some of the famous dinosaur tracks from the Paluxy Riverbed in Texas, and there is one with there's one that walks along in the mud with human footprint. Now this is supposed to be impossible. Dinosaurs were supposed to be extinct 60 million years before people came along. There is even one found in Utah with a shoe stepping on a trilobite. We're talking 550 million years ago. Trilobites, sea creatures. I mean, what is this? If it was some displaced human. Would have been very bad luck because the air at the time would have been toxic to us. Never mind, talk about foreign microbes and stuff, but there were, the air isn't like it, the atmosphere isn't like it is today. So bad news if anybody got, whatever, sucked into some portal or intersect. But who knows? I mean, there are more mysteries for every question that's answered.
Well, they just found a spark plug embedded in like this 50,000-year-old rock or something.
Oh, yeah. Quarries in France, they find quarrying instruments in strata that are like over a million years. Well, we're always saying, 1,000 civilizations can rise and fall in a million years, and most of human history is empty. We don't know anything about it.
Right.
So, I mean, who knows what happened? Anyway, let's get to poor Yvette in Whitensville, Mass. here, who asks, and this might lighten our load a little bit intellectually. What is the current state of paranormal entertainment, reality shows, and movies? I heard that many of these reality shows are faked. I think Shane has mentioned that. But they all have handsome guys and cute girls hunting ghosts. Will it ever get more intelligent? Why don't you guys have a show? Oh, good grief. That's your domain, too.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to a lot of I know there's a couple new shows out there right now that I don't watch them, but I do know for a fact that some of the popular ones in the past have not only have I been told by producers that they fake stuff. If they get to an investigation and there's not anything much going on, they'll edit the footage to look a certain way, or they'll throw things in there, or they might have someone in the other room making noise or whatever. But so I've been told that by producers of these shows, but also on some of the live Halloween special shows, they've been caught doing stuff, rigging their jacket to look like their hood's being pulled, but they thought they were out of the scene, out of the view of the camera while they're rigging up their camera, their jacket, and then they walk over closer to the camera, but totally busted. So I mean, yeah, they do. I mean, it's all ratings, and they don't want their show to be canceled. But if you really know, if you understand the paranormal mechanics, how this stuff works, you wouldn't have to fake it. You would know how to present it, or where to be and what to do to have it present itself. And these people just don't understand it. But so, I mean, they definitely, this stuff has been faked in the past, but I don't know about the recent shows. I know, like, as funny as they are, like Ghost Adventures, I've watched some of that stuff, sometimes I force myself to watch these shows, but they actually asked me to be on the show at one point. So I'll watch just to kind of learn a little bit about them. And I think they're probably, believe it or not, probably more legit than some of the other ones I've seen. Do they fake stuff? I don't know, maybe, possibly, but they seem more in line with what I've seen in the field than what these other clowns do,
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I agree. We know, we have a couple of friends who are involved in some, particularly one of two of the Bigfoot shows, and he said he was very upset that the producers would plant evidence, things of this kind, and he himself, he was under contract, so he couldn't get out of it. But we don't want anything to do with anything like that,
no,
to say the least. As a matter of fact, when we have had a brief foray into the world of reality shows, which are cheap to make because they're not scripted, we've done a couple of pilots, and we made it clear there will be nothing. For some of these are so active, you wouldn't have to fake anything in the first place, just the witnesses alone. But we were told essentially when the sizzler reel was done and when it went to the networks would come back and say essentially you don't fight enough as father and son, and certainly we don't argue, and you are too intelligent. In so many words, they would say that. So. Fine, the heck with them.
Yeah. We
do this show. We got a lot of listeners, and we do what we can, and there we go. And thanks to our station manager, we now it's kind of a TV show too. So I think that's great. But the last time was in the Pennsylvania case. I should say the Connecticut case, and we had I could name some of the directors here, and you can look them up. They're well known, and some outside party would come in, so we were told by the production company, and mess things up. At one point, Meryl Streep was personally involved in one of the sizzler reels for that. That's the thing the production company sends out to the network to get them to buy the show. And the wrong reel was sent out, and one of the producers quit over that, as a matter of fact. She was so upset about it. And so anyway, there were all kinds of shenanigans going on, but it's almost as if somebody doesn't want us to be doing anything major on some of these flap area cases. So I don't know, but I was on the air once with Jason Hawes from the granddaddy of all the ghost hunting shows, Ghost Hunters, and I was I was kind of impressed with him. We had a great conversation, although I kind of got the feeling that I was perceived as a threat. Because, we disagree with all the theories. Although I've been told that certain groups, I mean, we've had letters, people have emailed the show and said, you're too hard on ghost hunters. We're using your theories, and we're getting amazing results, so be nicer to us, you know. And so, I mean, whatever that may be worth, I mean, I still don't think people should be out there messing with this stuff. But there it is. So we don't have, that's why we don't have our own show.
I've been offered several times, and I've met with, these producers. They come up from Manhattan or, Hollywood or whatever, L.A., I should say. And I meet with them, and my thing is I'm not even going to consider the show unless you put me down as having some kind of say as to what is put out to the public.
Yep.
If you're not going to do that, I'm not going to do the show.
Yep.
I don't need money that bad. You know, I don't do this for money. I do this because I care about it. And it means a lot to me. And so all right, see ya. Have a nice day.
Well, I'll tell you where it's gotten us. There's a screenwriter in L.A. who is a really wonderful person, and she's working on a scripted show with Ben and I as like a comedy team. That's maybe a backhanded compliment. I don't know, but we'll see if it ever goes anywhere. So that's as far as we've gotten. But anything that's going to be produced, because cable is dying, YouTube is big, and we work with. He's been on the show many times. Our good friend Alexander Petikoff, brilliant young filmmaker, who's been all over the world, globetrotting, and we're working with him possibly on a couple of productions. One certainly about in New Hampshire, the America's Stonehenge. We've been working on that, and also Chuck Credo, our good friend, who's one of the best interviewers I've ever worked with, short of George Knapp. I think he's the second best. And so there will be some possibilities for some television and video productions beyond what we do on the show every week here. And we'll just keep everybody posted on that. But I don't think this is going to be any reality TV for us. No thanks. All right. Okay, this is one from Craig. We do not know where Craig is from. What do you guys think about, it's probably time for one more question, Edgar Cayce and Carlos Castaneda. Now, Edgar Cayce was known as the sleeping prophet, okay? He would literally go to sleep, and he was active, particularly in the 1930s, 40s, and in some of the 50s, I believe, I believe it was Virginia. And he would wake up and have these insights, and he was it's taken very seriously. He was kind of a serious fellow, he didn't seem frivolous, and his reputation has come down to us since then. And I remember that I'm thinking of David Wilcock, who has been on the show today, a very nice fellow, but he kind of hints around that he's the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce, and of course with our theories, reincarnation would be meaningless. I mean, in the classic sense, and he kind of looks like him. But we love David, and he's been on the show a couple of times. But I don't know about the whole thing. But Edgar Cayce is the sleeping prophet taken very seriously. Carlos Castaneda was sort of a mysterious fellow from Mexico, I believe, and he was very popular in the 1960s. I remember when I was in college, a lot of people were reading Carlos Castaneda's books, and I don't know a lot about him, but he was sort of in the tradition, I guess, of Edgar Cayce, although he didn't sleep a lot. But it was, again, esoteric knowledge and things of this kind. You can look back at people like Nostradamus and say, well, he predicted Hitler in World War II, and he predicted certain things in modern times. But nobody knew he predicted until after it happened. Look back and say, oh, this must be this. So, to me, what's that about? There's sort of like, backwards reasoning, and I don't know. So, I don't have a high opinion of these quote-unquote prophets. Theologically, prophets don't predict the future. They speak the word of God, in the Old Testament and stuff. So it's not necessarily about predicting the future. So I don't know, Shane, what do you think about all that?
I don't know, but Carlos Castaneda, as far as he's concerned, I've read some of his books. Actually, I own some of his books.
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah, I enjoy him actually. Do I believe he's speaking from real experiences? I don't know. It's.
I always consider them works of fiction.
Yeah, I really do. I would lean that way.
Yeah.
But at the same token, some of the stuff that he he talks about doing is actually real. He just goes about it in a really roundabout way, but the mechanics are there. So there is an understanding that he does have of how some of this stuff works. He's just doing it in a really roundabout way, or using symbolic things, but the mechanic understanding, I believe he has in a lot of areas.
Yeah.
But is the other books real? I don't know.
Well, one of the things that bothers me is that people take so seriously people who think they're predicting the future. All right. I'm disturbed that people would think I'm predicting the end of the world in 2020. Because that's not what's happening. So people need to think for themselves. I think, and people tend to be sheeple sometimes.
Yeah.
Looking for leaders and looking for that can be very dangerous. Best to keep your feet on the ground. Again, pay attention to your responsibilities in your daily life and think for yourself. And I've always thought that it takes, as we said to this theologian, Dr. Hart, who was on a few weeks ago, a great show, a lot of listeners podcast, that it's better to that you have to be as reasonable in deciding what you don't believe as deciding what you do believe. In other words, you should use your reason to decide what not to believe as well as what to believe.
Yeah.
So people should use their reason all around and keep their feet on the ground. So whether it be Edgar Casey or whoever, things are not always as advertised, and then use your head. Let's say that. So, okay. All right. I think we can get to our announcements here. First of all, a happy new year to everyone, and thank you everyone who wrote in. We will get to your material eventually. And let's remember that the world is what we make it. And as long as it doesn't end.
Next year.
Yeah, right. We look forward to the 2020 lecture season and our first event, the New England Parafest in Kittery, Maine in April. Stay tuned for more details as the date approaches. There'll be other events throughout the year as well, including the Exeter UFO Festival in New Hampshire on Labor Day weekend and the Greater New England UFO Conference in Massachusetts on Columbus Day. And I understand that I will be honored to be the keynote speaker there in 2020. Shane, what do you have cooking?
Not a whole lot. The only thing
we need to get you back into these main lineups here, the headliners.
The Parafest in April. That's really the only thing I have scheduled.
Richard from San Francisco just wrote, "Fun show." Okay, a nice short comment. Thank you, Richard. All right, good. Okay, so do you want to? Okay, Ben today.
I'll do my Ben impersonation.
Okay.
Check out our books. That meaning yours and Ben's books. Behind the Paranormal, Everything You Know Is Wrong, and Behind the Paranormal 2, Bigfoot, Mothman, and Monsters You Never Heard Of, and now, Dancing Past the Graveyard, Poltergeists, Parasites, Parallel Worlds, and God. They're all available from online retailers and in some stores, the better stores. But for autographed copies, please visit the online bookstore at BehindTheParanormal.com.
Okay. Also at BehindTheParanormal.com, you can find out more about the show, our many cases over the years, and the most recent shows are posted there, the most recent recorded shows, and we have taken to posting those on various podcast sites as well, including that's our 11-plus years on the air here, including 4.5-year run on CBS Radio, along with special shows and podcasts and all our shows here on ON 1240. And we've got them back to mid-2010 at this point, and also available on major podcast platforms, as I say, YouTube, iTunes, etc. And we will eventually get those back to 2008. So, and there are a lot of interesting subjects we covered there.
There are also some links to several charities we've adopted on the show, including USA Cares, Canadian Veterans Advocacy, Helping Haiti's Orphans, Youth Mentoring Connection in Los Angeles, the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation of America, the Sisters of Ground Zero, along with the Milk Fund here in northern Rhode Island.
Okay, very good. And Shane, any
you asked them that
comments?
Question already.
I did, yes.
Any changes to what's going on in your life?
Since 20 seconds ago.
Well, yeah, actually I've been talking to some people behind the scenes about some really cool stuff, some real secretive stuff. You know about one of them.
Yes.
But we can't say nothing yet.
Yeah.
But I can't wait till we can come on the show and have that gentleman on here to talk about. I'm very excited about that.
Yes. Very different stuff, too.
Yes.
So, Ben, or I should say Dave, what do we have cooking for next week?
Well, it says here that next Sunday, January 5th, we bring you author Nathaniel Gillis on the subject of demonology.
Yes, whatever that may be. I'm looking forward to that because we're going to be exchanging a lot of ideas on this subject. Okay, so we have time for the quote?
Yes.
Okay. We leave you